Every problem in your life becomes harder when you don't know how to handle yourself first. You want more clarity, more control, more strength, but your mind is scattered. Your habits are weak. You react to everything. You chase comfort but lose peace. You chase progress but can't stay consistent. You try to lead, but deep down you're not leading yourself. Here's what the Stoics believed. You don't need to control the world. You need to control your responses to it. Master your reactions, and you master your reality. Build inner strength, and the outside world can't shake you. In this video, we break down the core principles of Stoic self-mastery, step by step. You'll learn how to overcome emotional chaos, how to build daily discipline, and how to reset your life through inner focus and mental clarity. No fluff, no hype, just tools that work when life gets messy. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. It's about showing up for yourself, quietly and relentlessly, until your discipline becomes your identity. And you're not the only one fighting this. Every man has struggled with consistency, emotion, and control. But that's exactly why this path matters. Like the video, subscribe for more Stoic training, and share it with a man you care about. Because when you finally master yourself, no one and nothing can take your peace again. 1. Forge inner strength through small daily actions. You don't build a strong life by waiting for the storm. You build it by training in the silence before it hits. Most men think power comes in big moments, when they land the deal, win the argument, or finally level up. But real strength doesn't appear on the battlefield. It's forged in your morning routine, in the way you speak to yourself when no one else hears, in the way you act when nobody's watching. Inner strength isn't something you're born with. It's a result of repeated resistance. Not dramatic, not glamorous, just precise and disciplined, over time. Like a blade shaped by thousands of quiet strikes, your mind is carved by what you choose to do every day. And more importantly, what you choose not to do. The problem is, most people wait for motivation to show up before they act. They want to feel ready, focused, and inspired. But that moment rarely comes. Life doesn't hand you perfect conditions. It throws distractions at you. It tempts you with instant gratification. It tests you when you're tired, unprepared, or bored. And if you haven't trained consistency in the small, invisible choices, you will break when the pressure rises. That's where most people fail. They think strength is about emotion. You need to feel powerful to act powerfully. But the Stoics knew the opposite. Action creates emotion. Discipline creates clarity. The man who can rise without being asked, who can show up even when he doesn't feel like it, that man becomes unshakable. Not because he was always confident, but because he trained himself to be dependable, especially to himself. Imagine two men standing in the same chaos. One reacts, the other responds. The difference? One spent years training his defaults through small, consistent action. The other waited for clarity to magically appear. But nothing magical happens to men who don't train their habits. In fact, the habit of not training is exactly what keeps you weak. So how do you begin? You don't need to redesign your whole life overnight. You start with one discipline, one anchor, something so small it's impossible to fail, yet meaningful enough to build momentum. For some, it's waking up early and making the bed with intention. For others, it's 10 minutes of quiet reflection before the day floods in. It doesn't matter what you choose. What matters is that you choose it and you do it, without excuse, without negotiation. The modern world is built to weaken your will. Social media trains your brain to seek quick hits of dopamine. Every notification rewires your attention. Every skipped routine chips away at your self-respect. But with each small act of discipline, you take it back. Quietly, repeatedly, permanently. That's how you start to rebuild trust with yourself. That's how you move from a life of reaction to a life of design. You stop being led by mood and start being led by principle. The Stoics weren't chasing perfection. They were building resilience, one habit, one rule, one silent choice at a time. So tomorrow morning, don't scroll, don't snooze, don't negotiate. Get up, get focused. Take one simple action, again and again, until it becomes part of who you are. Because that's what real strength looks like. It's not loud. It's not visible. But it's there. And when life hits hard, you'll feel it. Not in your muscles, in your mind. 2. Destroy procrastination before it destroys you. You don't lose your potential in one big decision. You lose it in quiet moments when you say maybe later to the things that matter. The project you delayed, the workout you skip, the call you avoid. Each one seems small, harmless, forgettable. But stack enough of them together and you build a life filled with regret instead of results. Procrastination isn't laziness. It's hesitation dressed in comfort. It's the silent decision to abandon your future for a feeling. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because it feels safe. You tell yourself you'll do it when you're more motivated, more rested, more prepared. But that moment rarely comes. Days turn into weeks, goals turn into guilt, and the version of you that was once sharp, focused, disciplined, fades quietly into someone who watches others win. That's the lie most people buy into, that they'll act when they feel ready. But Stoic philosophy flips this mindset completely. It doesn't ask how you feel. It asks, what needs to be done? Because the Stoic man doesn't wait for clarity, he builds it. He doesn't obey emotion, he overrides it with reason. He knows the longer you wait, the weaker your will becomes. He knows hesitation robs energy, drains purpose, and feeds the exact chaos you're trying to escape. Imagine your future like a structure. Every time you act, you place a brick. When you delay, you do nothing. When you procrastinate often, the ground beneath you erodes. Soon there's no momentum left, only the ruins of half-finished intentions. That's why discipline matters more than motivation, because motivation is fleeting. But action, once repeated, becomes identity. Still, most men don't realize the cost of delay until the damage is deep. They think they're buying time, but they're renting fear. The longer they delay what matters, the heavier it becomes in their minds. A simple task turns into an emotional mountain. They overthink, they avoid, they drown in mental clutter. But Stoicism offers a sharp blade to cut through all that noise. Act now, no matter how you feel. This is not a theory. This is a habit. Start with one thing, the task you keep avoiding. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Begin. That's it. Because once motion begins, resistance weakens. And once you move, even a little, you start to rewire your self-image. You stop being the man who delays and become the man who begins. That shift, though small, is everything. Discipline is not about doing everything perfectly. It's about choosing progress over paralysis, again and again. Every time you show up, even imperfectly, you reinforce a powerful truth. You are not at the mercy of your moods. You are not a slave to procrastination. You are in command. The Stoics weren't emotionless statues. They had doubts, just like you. But they didn't obey their doubts. They chose logic, structure, and purpose. They knew freedom wasn't the absence of difficulty, it was the strength to move through it. And in today's world, where distractions are engineered to hijack your mind, your ability to act without delay is a superpower. So stop negotiating with your excuses. Don't wait for the perfect time. Choose now, because every time you act despite the resistance, you shrink the power procrastination has over you. You take back your focus, your direction, your edge, and slowly, silently, you become the man who finishes what he starts, because he no longer lets hesitation make his decisions for him. 3. Master one thing and everything else will shift. You don't need 100 new habits. You need one thing. Done well, done deeply, done daily. The world keeps telling you to be well-rounded, to do more, to stack skills like a checklist. But spreading yourself thin never makes you strong. It makes you scattered. And men who scatter their attention rarely build anything that lasts. Mastery is not about volume. It's about depth. When you commit to mastering one thing, a discipline, a craft, a mindset, something changes in you. You begin to understand structure, control, timing, and repetition. You learn how to wrestle with boredom, overcome frustration, and delay gratification without applause. Those lessons don't stay in that one area. They follow you everywhere. Because the way you do one thing begins to shape the way you do everything. Most people chase variety because they fear stillness. They think jumping from one thing to another means growth. But motion without direction is just a disguised form of distraction. You feel busy, but you're getting nowhere. That's how the average man lives, always switching, always starting, never finishing. But the Stoic mindset doesn't celebrate momentum, it celebrates precision. It asks, are you building something real or just staying busy to avoid the silence of commitment? When you master one practice, you build more than skill. You build identity. You stop being a man who dabbles. You become the man who finishes. and that rewires your brain to trust itself. That's what most people lack, not motivation, but self-trust. Because they break their own word. They say they'll train, then skip it. They say they'll focus, then scroll. Every broken promise leaves a crack in your willpower. But when you stay with one thing, even when it's hard, you begin to trust your own pattern. And when you trust yourself, you no longer need external validation. You're not chasing approval. You're building power. The Stoics knew this long before modern science confirmed it. Mastery wasn't about trophies. It was about training the self through consistent, purposeful repetition. They understood that excellence is a byproduct of how you approach the small daily act, not because that act is glamorous, but because it transforms your thinking. You stop asking for easier paths, you start showing up with more intention. So choose one thing, one form of practice that demands focus, patience, and discipline. Not for the result, but for who you become in the process. It might be weightlifting, it might be writing, it might be managing your finances with precision. What matters is not what it is. What matters is that it trains your mind to stay, endure, repeat, and sharpen. A sword doesn't get strong by switching fires. It gets strong by staying in one long enough to take shape. And you don't become a man of mastery by chasing scattered greatness. You become him by digging deep into one place until your character is carved by the grind. Don't try to master 10 things this month. Master one. Let it mold your discipline, your focus, your inner clarity. Then watch how everything else, your reactions, your priorities, your confidence, begins to shift. Not because you changed everything, but because you became the type of man who could. 4. Never let emotions steer the wheel. Every man feels anger, fear, envy, and doubt, but not every man lets those feelings take the wheel. The difference between the man who collapses under pressure and the one who stays calm isn't what they feel, it's what they follow. You don't have to suppress emotion to master yourself. You just have to stop obeying it. Emotions scream, reason whispers. Most men live their lives listening to whichever voice is louder, not wiser. When someone disrespects you, your anger rises. When things go wrong, fear creeps in. When someone else wins, envy sharpens. If you act on every one of these without pause, you give away control. You don't respond, you react. And when you react emotionally, you surrender leadership. You hand the keys to your peace over to whatever just triggered you. The mistake is thinking strength comes from expressing whatever you feel in the moment. But the strongest men don't unleash. They hold, not because they're afraid, but because they've trained their ego to wait. Stoic thinking doesn't tell you to feel nothing. It trains you to decide what your feeling deserves. Not every insult requires your energy. Not every mistake deserves your meltdown. A man who cannot pause cannot command. Imagine driving a car where every bump in the road makes you swerve. Eventually, you crash, not because of the road, but because you couldn't hold the wheel. Life is the same. People will provoke you. Situations will frustrate you. But your power lies not in what happens, it lies in your ability to stay steady. That's why the Stoics saw emotional discipline as a form of freedom. When your feelings no longer decide your actions, you become immune to manipulation. You reclaim your ability to choose. The world today rewards outrage. Social media trains you to react fast, loud, and often. But every time you explode, you weaken your discipline. And once that pattern sets in, you stop trusting your own judgment. That's how men lose credibility, not because they're incapable, but because they can't manage their own impulses. When your emotions own you, your potential stays locked. And the more you justify your reactions, the more you normalize being powerless. You can train this differently. You start by creating space between the stimulus and the response. When something provokes you, don't answer it with energy, answer it with structure. Count 5 seconds. Ask, is this worth my peace? Does this move me forward or just make noise? Then respond, not as the boy who wants to prove a point, but as the man who protects his center. It's not weakness, it's control. And in a world that reacts to everything, control is power. Real emotional strength isn't loud. It's silent, still, decisive. A man who doesn't need to prove he's right doesn't flinch when others are wrong. He doesn't need to shout back. He doesn't need to make a scene. He's already chosen the one battlefield he controls. His mind. So the next time anger rises, stop. The next time fear whispers, wait. The next time pride pushes, pause. The more often you do this, the stronger that internal pause becomes. Eventually, it replaces impulse with intention. And that's the shift that changes everything. Because when emotions no longer drive your life, you stop being led. And you start leading, quietly, rationally, powerfully. 5. Cut the cord of dependency on others. The man who needs approval to move will always be delayed. The one who depends on external praise to feel strong will never build real strength. You don't rise by being liked. You rise by being independent. Not cold, not arrogant, just deeply stable without anyone's permission. Most people build their confidence on shifting ground. One compliment, they feel high. One rejection, and they fall apart. Their self-worth is rented from others, not owned. But what's rented can be taken. And when your peace depends on being accepted, you become easy to control. That's not freedom. That's emotional slavery with a polite face. Stoic philosophy cuts straight through this. They taught that if something can be taken from you, it was never truly yours. That includes validation, status, and attention. None of it makes you more valuable. You were valuable the moment you took responsibility for yourself. The moment you stopped chasing applause and started building character in silence. Think of a man standing on a mountain. If he's looking down at the crowd for direction, he'll lose his balance. But if his feet are planted on something internal, principles, discipline, quiet confidence, he'll remain steady even when the world shouts. You can't climb high while being pulled in every direction. That's why the strongest men you've seen are often the quietest. They don't need to be seen to know who they are. The modern world conditions you to chase validation. Social platforms reward reactions. Every scroll tells you you're not enough, unless the world agrees. But every time you act for approval, you compromise your center. You bend, you adjust, you filter your truth to avoid conflict. And slowly, without realizing it, you become a version of yourself built by everyone else. That's how identity dies, by 1,000 small approvals. Cutting the cord doesn't mean isolation. It means emotional independence. It means loving people without needing them to shape how you feel about yourself. It means staying generous, but never dependent. Kind, but not controllable. You can still serve others, lead others, care deeply, without letting their mood control your direction. To start, watch your language. Catch yourself when you say, "I just don't want them to think," or "What if they don't like it?" Stop there. Ask instead, "What do I believe is right?" Let that become your compass. And when the pressure to please kicks in, remind yourself that growth often requires disappointing the world to stay loyal to your path. Every time you say no to what doesn't align, without explaining, justifying, or defending, you strengthen your independence. That doesn't mean you become harsh. It means you become whole. You no longer outsource your worth to anyone's reaction. You stand on a foundation that can't be shaken by someone's mood, silence, or opinion. The Stoics didn't chase popularity. They built clarity. They trained themselves to walk alone if they had to, not because they hated people, but because they refused to betray themselves. In a noisy world, that level of emotional detachment is not just power, it's peace. So detach without bitterness, speak without fear, act without waiting for a round of applause. Because when you no longer need others to believe in you, you become unstoppable. Not because you shut the world out, but because you've already decided who you are before the world gets a vote. 6. Let go. Don't give up. Holding on too tightly doesn't make you strong, it makes you fragile. When your peace depends on controlling outcomes, people, or timing, you're not powerful. You're trapped. Most men confuse letting go with giving up. But giving up is quitting because it's hard. Letting go is refusing to fight battles that aren't yours to win. It's choosing clarity over control. You're told to push harder, grip tighter, and force results. But that mindset, when applied without wisdom, leads to burnout, resentment, and bitterness. You can't master life if you're constantly wrestling with what's beyond your control. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you no longer let what you can't control control you. The common mistake is trying to predict and shape everything. Other people's reactions, the speed of your success, the way others perceive your effort. And when life doesn't cooperate, you spiral. Anxiety builds. Frustration takes over. You react emotionally, not rationally. But the Stoics understood this trap. They taught a brutal clarity. Some things are yours, some things are not. The key to inner strength is knowing the difference. You don't need to surrender your ambition. You need to surrender your obsession. Obsession with outcomes, obsession with timing, obsession with being understood. The tighter you grip, the less flow you allow. Imagine water in your palm. Clench your fist, and it spills. Keep it open, and it stays. Control is often an illusion dressed as safety. The man who lets go of what he can't direct finds something stronger: focus. He starts putting energy where it matters, into habits, decisions, and responses. He trains himself to detach emotionally from results so he can attach fully to effort. That's not weakness. That's mature strength. It's the kind of power that doesn't need to be loud because it's rooted in calm. You can start this shift now. Begin by identifying one thing that drains you. A conversation you keep replaying, an outcome you keep trying to bend, a person whose approval you crave. Instead of trying harder, release it. Then redirect that energy into what's still yours to command: your preparation, your presence, your practice. Letting go doesn't mean you lose interest. It means you no longer beg life to happen your way. You stay alert, ready, disciplined, but free. You stop making tension a requirement for progress. You learn to act without attachment. That's the Stoic path. Not indifference, detachment. Not passivity, focus. Think about the most unshakable people you know. They don't flinch when things shift. They adapt, they adjust, they don't cling, they don't chase. They move forward with precision because they've accepted what's not in their grip and doubled down on what is. This mindset sharpens your discipline. You stop wasting time trying to control what fights back. You stop leaking emotional energy into black holes of overthinking. You start building a life rooted in clarity, not chaos. That clarity makes your decisions stronger, your peace deeper, your presence more grounded. So the next time you feel tempted to force something, pause. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry? If it is, act. If it's not, let go. Without guilt, without explanation. That pause is your new power. That question is your new freedom. And in a world addicted to control, your ability to release becomes your greatest weapon. Because the man who no longer clings to outcomes becomes unbreakable. Not because he doesn't care, but because he finally knows what doesn't deserve to carry him. 7. Run towards struggle, not away from it. The pain you avoid is the exact place your power is hiding. Most men spend their lives dodging discomfort, building comfort zones like fortresses, thinking safety is strength. But that safety is a cage. And the longer you avoid struggle, the softer your mind becomes. Growth never lives in the easy. It lives in the sharp, the cold, the inconvenient. The man you want to be is already on the other side of the thing you keep avoiding. Struggle is not a flaw in the process. It is the process. Strength of character, mental discipline, inner clarity, they're not gifted. They're earned. And they're earned through resistance. Just like a muscle grows only when it's torn, your mindset sharpens only when it's tested. Most men mistake struggle for failure. They interpret pressure as punishment. But the Stoics flipped that thinking. Struggle, they believed, wasn't something to fear. It was the exact furnace that refines you. It's easy to nod along when life is quiet. But what happens when your plan breaks, when your ego gets hit, when no one is watching and everything feels pointless? That's the true test. Not what you do when everything's working, but what you do when it isn't. The Stoics trained for hardship by stepping into it. Not recklessly, but deliberately. They embraced voluntary discomfort, fasting, silence, rejection, not to suffer, but to build what most people never train: inner armor. Avoiding struggle doesn't keep you safe, it keeps you soft. And when life inevitably throws a storm your way, you'll have no tools to stand. But when you seek it on your terms, when you expose yourself to challenge before it exposes you, something changes. You start to trust yourself. You stop fearing pressure. You know that no matter what shows up, you'll show up too, with precision, not panic. This doesn't mean you should seek chaos. It means you stop flinching when a challenge appears. You stop complaining when the work feels heavy. You start moving toward the very things you used to avoid. The hard conversation, the early wake-up, the routine that doesn't reward you immediately. Because every time you lean into resistance, you shrink the power that fear has over you. Most men wait for confidence before they act. But confidence is the result of doing hard things, not the requirement. You want self-respect? Go through something difficult on purpose and keep your word. You want clarity? Step into discomfort and notice what rises in your mind. That's the part of you still untrained. And that's exactly where your work is. The Stoic understood that comfort is temporary and deceptive. It looks like peace, but it robs you of the ability to face what's coming. When you lean on comfort too long, even small things become unbearable. But when you train your mind to hold stress, your threshold expands. What once broke you now barely moves you. Start simple. Choose one discomfort a day. It could be physical, like cold water or a longer run. It could be emotional, like setting a boundary you've been avoiding. It could be mental, like focusing on one hard task with full attention. What matters is that you do it on purpose. You teach yourself every day that struggle is not a threat. It's your training ground. The man who runs into the fire with calm is not reckless. He's prepared because he's already faced discomfort behind closed doors. He didn't wait for the world to test him. He tested himself, quietly, daily, relentlessly. And now, while others panic, he simply breathes, adjusts, and moves forward. That is Stoic resilience, not the absence of pain, but the refusal to let pain dictate your path. 8. Keep your mind clear when the world gets loud. When the world shouts, the man who whispers inside wins. Chaos doesn't begin outside you, it begins when you let it in. Your phone buzzes, opinions fly, people pull, deadlines pile up, and suddenly your mind becomes a battlefield. Not because life got harder, but because your clarity got hijacked. And a man without clarity is easy to push, easy to provoke, easy to defeat. Mental clarity isn't something you wait for. It's something you build. Most men never learn to protect their attention, and in doing so, they lose their direction. They wake up reactive. Their minds are filled before the day begins. They scroll, compare, complain, and chase whatever yells the loudest. And slowly they forget what they value because they've been too busy absorbing what everyone else wants. This is where Stoic thinking becomes not just relevant, but vital. The Stoics trained themselves to remain undisturbed, not because the world was quiet, but because their minds were fortified. They believed that attention is your most precious weapon. If you don't guard it, you can't guard anything. Your goals, your emotions, your energy all collapse when your attention is constantly scattered. Picture your mind like a lens. When it's clean, you see everything with sharpness and purpose. But when it's fogged by noise, gossip, distraction, useless worry, every decision becomes distorted. You hesitate, overthink, chase validation, and lose your edge. That fog doesn't clear on its own. You have to wipe it away deliberately every day. The modern world is designed to steal your focus. Every platform, every notification, every algorithm is built to train your brain to crave stimulation instead of stillness. That's why you can't think straight after 20 minutes of scrolling. That's why you feel tired before noon. Not because you've done too much, but because your mind's been stretched in 20 directions without rest. And if you never claim that space back, you'll keep drifting into other people's agendas. Reclaiming mental clarity is an act of discipline. It's not about isolating yourself. It's about filtering what gets access to your mind. That means designing your mornings to be quiet before they become reactive. It means placing boundaries on how often you check what others are doing. It means scheduling time for deep focus, even if the world around you doesn't. This is not extreme, it's survival, because your clarity determines your direction, and your direction shapes your life. Without clarity, you're not building, you're reacting. Without clarity, you don't lead, you follow noise disguised as urgency. Start small. Begin your day without your phone. For just 1 hour, let your thoughts be your own. No headlines, no notifications, no opinions, just space. Breathe into it. Let your real priorities speak again. Then decide what matters. Then move. That habit alone, protecting your first hour, will change your entire trajectory because it resets your center. It reminds you that you are in charge of what gets in, what gets attention, and what gets done. And the more often you do that, the stronger your focus becomes. Over time, you won't need silence to be clear. You'll bring clarity into noise. You won't need the world to be calm. You'll be the calm inside the storm. That's the Stoic edge. Clarity, not chaos. Structure, not reaction. Mental stillness in a world addicted to noise. Not as an escape, but as your greatest advantage. Because when your mind is clean, sharp, and directed, nothing can pull you off course. Not opinions, not distractions, not even doubt. 9. Live by principles, not popular opinion. When a man has no code, he becomes a mirror for the crowd. He reflects whatever others want him to be, says what's expected, does what's rewarded, and slowly disappears inside the noise. Without a foundation, you drift. Without principles, you perform. And the performance always ends with exhaustion. But a man who lives by internal law stands like a lighthouse, unmoved even when the sea gets violent. Most people live by reaction. Their values change depending on who's in the room. Their tone changes to avoid disapproval. Their choices bend to fit the trend. It looks polite, but underneath, it's fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of being different. They sacrifice truth for applause and call it social intelligence. But Stoicism doesn't reward appearance. It trains alignment. To live by principle means you've already decided who you are before the world votes. You don't ask if it's popular, you ask if it's right. You don't obey your mood, you obey your mission. And while others rush to keep up with the shifting standard, you stay anchored. That doesn't mean you're perfect, it means you're consistent. And consistency builds identity. Most men don't fall because of one big mistake. They fall because of 1,000 small compromises. Say nothing to keep the peace. Pretend to agree to avoid conflict. Scroll when you should train. Laugh when you should walk away. And it all adds up to a life that's acceptable on the outside but unrecognizable on the inside. The Stoics warned against this erosion. They taught that virtue is not reactive. It's chosen, daily, regardless of outcome. Your standard isn't situational, it's structural. And when your standard holds, you hold. Even when people don't understand. Even when it costs you popularity, attention, or short-term comfort. Picture a compass. It doesn't argue, it doesn't change. It points north, no matter how lost you feel. That's what a principle does for a man. It gives him clarity when things get foggy. It protects him from the drift. And in a world that constantly pulls you to fit in, that internal compass is your only way forward with dignity intact. This doesn't mean becoming stubborn. It means becoming anchored. Open to growth, but not to dilution. Willing to listen, but unwilling to betray what you know to be true. It's the difference between being flexible and being formless. Flexibility adapts. Formlessness disappears. To apply this, start by defining 3 values you won't trade. Write them, speak to them, live them. And when life pushes, you'll know what to hold. These aren't slogans for others to admire. They're the rules you follow when no one's watching. Maybe it's honesty, even when it hurts. Maybe it's discipline, even when no one's counting. Maybe it's restraint, even when emotion tempts you to explode. Build your decisions on those. Let them shape your time, your energy, your voice. Let them make your yes clean and your no firm. And when someone challenges you, calmly hold the line. That calm isn't pride. It's proof you're no longer negotiating with your values. In a world addicted to popularity, the man who chooses principle becomes rare. But rarity is power. Not because it attracts followers, but because it filters out what doesn't belong. And when your life becomes filtered by your values, not your fears, everything sharpens. Your energy, your decisions, your direction, and most of all, your peace. Because you no longer live on borrowed identity, you live by truth. And truth doesn't shake when the crowd shifts. Mastering yourself is not a one-time decision. It is a daily discipline, a quiet, relentless return to the foundation you choose to build upon. Today, we walk through 9 pillars that hold up the life of a man who refuses to be ruled by emotion, distraction, or external chaos. From practicing clarity in the small moments, to building emotional resilience, to standing firm on values when the world shifts, each principle leads you back to the same truth. You cannot lead your life if you do not first lead your mind. This is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's about waking up every day with intention, choosing inner discipline over outer noise, and cutting what weakens your mental strength before it grows roots. The world will try to hijack your focus, test your emotions, and shake your self-belief. But if you train daily, not just in action but in attention, you become steady. You become unshakable. Let this not be something you only understand. Let it be something you practice. Start by mastering one habit, one reaction, one moment of resistance. Track your thoughts, guard your energy, use each trigger as an opportunity to sharpen your control. And when you fail, begin again. Gently, but never passively. In time, your clarity will return faster. Your emotions will respond slower. Your decisions will align with your values, and your life will follow. Now, I invite you to share your story. What are you working on mastering in yourself? Which of these 9 principles speaks to your journey the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, not for attention, but for accountability. Because the path to self-mastery may be personal, but it's never walked alone.